So we're looking at India in the second half of the show this week. First up, it is the Indian pharmaceutical market. It's been doing pretty well recently, able to capitalise on the expiry of patents held by mostly Western nations. The long-told story is that Indian companies produce drugs cheaper and then sell them back to the United States and Europe. India's drugs industry is expected to be worth $20 billion by the end of this year. 10 years ago, it was only $6 billion. But the EU recently banned around 700 drugs products from India, which could amount to losses of as much as $1.2 billion. Europe's an important market. Over the last year, India exported $15.4 billion worth of pharmaceutical products. Europe received $3 billion worth, or 20% of that total. And what may surprise is that only $1 billion of that was these generic drugs, which goes some way to debunking the theory that India is only making so-called copycat drugs. We got one of our India correspondents, Faiz Jamil, to find out more about the ban on Indian drugs in the European Union and the United States for that matter. This is his report.
India's multi-billion-dollar drug industry has been hit by a ban on 700 generic drugs. The EU regulator alleges the clinical trials on the drugs were manipulated. The drugs will be banned in all 28 member states until retesting can be done. But generic manufacturers here say banning all the drugs based on a technical issue is unfair.
Because the manufacturer have already done so much of the work on those molecules, they should be given some chances and it should be analyzed in another lab.
Even if and when that happens, those in the generic drug industry say the damage to their reputation has already been done.
I'll say we have lost the prospective buyers which we could have got and as a contract manufacturer. Secondly, if you talk about reputation of Indian companies or the small Indian companies like us, we will face a lot of difficulty in registering the products.
The fear is the bad reputation could spread and affect sales in other countries, including the lucrative US market. Many of the drugs being banned by the EU are still widely available here and in many other countries. Local manufacturers are asking the Indian government to do what it can to lift the ban. But this whole issue goes beyond a single industry. It's already affecting negotiations for a free trade deal between the European Union and India. India has cancelled talks that were set for the end of August in response to the drug ban, further stalling the free trade deal that was supposed to be signed last year. This trade expert and former government consultant says the free trade deal has already been delayed over issues of human rights and trade protectionism, and the drug ban will slow negotiations even more.
You bring in a new irritant, which was not expected to be irritant, and which is a major exporter, then at some point, the Indian side is going to say, then what is the point in going through with the FTA anyway?
India is signaling it's willing to wait to ensure its major industries get the best deal. Trade analysts warn that the EU's drug ban may end up being a case of bad medicine, pushing India to focus trade in other parts of the world.
Let's discuss this further then with Dilip Shah, who's joining us from New Delhi. He is the Secretary General of the Indian Pharmaceuticals Alliance and CEO of the Vision Consultancy Group as well. Dilip, we were speaking off camera earlier about the intricate details of this ban. You were concerned about how the tests were conducted. But I want to deal with the broader issues here about India's pharmaceutical market. Do you feel India is being specifically targeted here? Is there a vendetta? Do people feel the quality of the drugs is not good enough? What is the underlying issue?
Let me give one more example of quality of drugs from US FDA. The recall of medicines by US FDA from American companies was 1,156 in 2014. The number of recalls from Indian companies were only 56, and India supplies 40% of the generics sold in the USA. To answer your question, the broad question, could it be retaliation for the compulsory license that Germany did this? Could it be that Indian companies are so competitive in terms of pricing that it hurts the European companies? Could it be that in government procurement for your health programs, the Indian companies supply quality products at much better prices, which help these governments to contain their healthcare expenditure. Now, it could be any of these reasons. It could only be a speculative if I were to say that yes, these were the reasons why this has happened. We suspect that there is something more than meets the eye on this ban, and that's the reason why Government of India came forward.
And so are you
India was
concerned
keen
then,
in
sorry to interrupt you
resuming
there, are you concerned about economic impact here? The numbers we have show that 20% of your market is Europe. $3 billion worth was accounted for by Europe. That could be a big hit for one industry to take.
Well, this particular episode may not have a large impact, but we are concerned about the perception of Indian pharmaceutical industry that is being created, and whoever is behind this has a certain motive, whether it's a commercial motive or some other motive. But the perception is being created that Indian drugs are not safe, and therefore doctors may stop prescribing or using these medicines. This is our concern.
And it's important for the wider Indian economy as well, isn't it? You've already mentioned there were those EU-India trade talks, the free trade talks that were underway and were supposed to resume. You don't want something like this affecting trade, wider trade between two potentially very big, important partners.
You're right. And neither Government of India wants it, nor do we want it, that wider trade issues should be impacted by this. But we, at the same time, we do expect that if one inspector or one agency makes a mistake and this is brought out, then the corrective action must be taken. Being unfair will not resume the trade talks. If fairness is brought back, I'm sure both sides would be willing to resume the talk.
Dilip Shah joining us from New Delhi. We thank you very much for your time.